Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Final Fantasy Brave Exodus video, and this is going to be kind of a strange video because it's not going to be any gameplay today, well, at least for this video. So yeah, I think this is not really a big hot take or anything. Pretty sure most of you guys came into this game because of Final Fantasy units, and the drastic turn lately of global original characters coming to the game on global and their Final Fantasy Brave Exodus characters, and they are of course much stronger than the JP ones. I see that all the time. I don't see why do then people think that I don't admit that. Of course, Chizuru is super amazing, Wilk is super amazing, Esther is super amazing, Sylvie is super amazing, but there becomes a problem, and there's a twofold on that. One on a business aspect and one on a nostalgia aspect. Let's go for the nostalgia first because that's the easiest, right? Most of you guys came to this game because of the Final Fantasy name, and you expected to come into this game, you know, I could have Cloud, Squall, you know, Zidane, and you know, all those other kind of characters on my team at the same time and play with them. Well, unfortunately, that's not really realistic, but it's kind of just a, you know, a fantasy thing you'd like to have, a fantasy team in Final Fantasy. So the reason why I started playing this game is because of Final Fantasy, not because of original, you know, story, Brave Exodus story, because who cares about that at first, right? I mean, the story is pretty decent every now and then. It's not terrible, but I didn't come into this game for, you know, Final Fantasy units not to be very good on the global version. Every time a Final Fantasy character comes onto global, they don't get buffed. They're terrible. No one cares about them, and they're basically just a nostalgia stick for you to pull for and just to look at inside of your unit inventory, and that's it. For example, the next Cloud that's coming out, he looks really amazing, and I reviewed him. If you haven't looked at that review, go ahead and check that out. He looks pretty amazing for JP standards, but when he comes to global, who knows? He has 150% amp, which global units do not have currently, but I'm sure eventually that'll happen, and it's just like we're not... It's cool that they made up their own line of characters for Final Fantasy Brave Exodus, but I want Final Fantasy characters to be good. When they come to global, people shouldn't just shrug their shoulders and say, oh, it's just a skip because it's not a global original unit, so they're not going to be good, they're not going to get buffed, so I'm just going to wait for the next global original unit. And that ties a very nice segue into the business aspect of this. Now, let's put it this way. Let's put it the most simplest way. You're McDonald's. You make this, you know, you have the Big Mac, and that's your bread and butter, and sometimes you add on to it in certain aspects, and it gets more exciting for you guys. But then you know that there's something else coming in the line. They announce, oh, look at this bigger burger. I mean, it looks pretty good, right? It looks pretty good. This is pretty amazing fast food item. And you're like, why would I want to go for this one when I can go for the one ahead of time? And I know that they're going to make something super special in ahead of time. So yeah, I don't like that they're mismaking global original characters, because eventually people are not going to pull on banners that are JP oriented at all, and that's kind of already at the point. I see it all in my comment section, and I don't blame you guys that, oh, this is another JP unit that's going to come into global and it's going to be terrible and who cares. I don't like that. I hate that. It's really bothering me that people just shrug their shoulders at JP units nowadays, and I get that, but I feel like they need to do the CN approach where they just buff everything that comes out, even if it's a little buff here and there. At least it's something. Maybe start making certain JP Final Fantasy related units have morale skills, perhaps. It would be nice. 'Cause I'm just sick of it, to where Tidus, for example, is going to come out and he's not going to be very strong, apparently. His STMR is very good, of course, very, very, very amazingly good, and no global unit has his STMR at all. So there are some aspects of what global units have, and sometimes their STMRs are just okay at best. They're kind of toned down. I mean, some of them are pretty good, like Chizuru's, for example, is pretty good for herself. But a lot of global STMRs are kind of watered down, if you think about it. And then you go look at the JP ones, and they're always super amazing. You're like, oh, I'm only going to pull this unit just because of their STMR. For example, the newest banner units on the global version, the Roos and Nilika, their STMRs are very good, and of course, Clash of Wills items are much better, but not everybody's going to be able to equip those, right? So Anyways, I would like to see Final Fantasy line units being looked at more than just their S2 and just, you know, toss them aside. Global needs to start buffing Tidus, for example. Maybe he gets a morale buff of some kind, and a lot of those other characters that'll be coming out, including Final Fantasy X2, the girls. Hopefully, maybe they get a small buff here and there, especially Pain. She needs a lot of help, and so that's all I'm looking for, guys. Just looking for, you know, playing with Final Fantasy characters in my Final Fantasy game. That's what I was promised at the very beginning. Even the tagline, when you look at their advertisements, make your own Final Fantasy team, Dream Team or something like that, right? Well, that's not reality right now. Here's your Dream Team: Sylvie, Esther, Roberta, you know, those kind of units. Like, no, there's some nostalgia for some of those characters because they had a story already before, but like, I want a Squall with morale abilities. How about Cloud with morale abilities? How about Zidane with a crown buff that he gets morale abilities? Or an intrinsic buff of some kind. They gave one to Mazurka, so they're not out of the realm of giving it to their own global made characters. They did give one to Mazurka, so maybe eventually mainline Final Fantasy characters can get intrinsic buffs. That's a certain start towards that. And for example, what if Neovision Awakening Tidus had a intrinsic ability that gave his LB/SLB a morale scaling mod? That'd be quite good. Goomy, if you're listening, that's a very good idea. Please implement that. I think everybody will be on board with that. I understand that some of you guys may not be completely in that mindset of only pull global exclusive and pull nothing else, or global original, sorry. Pull global original, nothing else, and you want to see Final Fantasy characters be good, but you're at the mercy of Goomy, who almost doesn't buff anything unless they're making money off of it. For example, Dark Rain. When they buffed Dark Rain, he was quite good, but people weren't really gonna, shell out because they had Angela, but then they buffed up Dark Rain's STMR, so that's kind of what they do for those kind of things. So they need to do that all the time. Every single mainline Final Fantasy character banner that comes out needs to be buffed in some way in global. Remember when they used to do that in the 6 and 7 star era and stuff like that? They used to do that all the time. They don't do it anymore. And you need to stop focusing so much on War of the Visions. You need to bring at least back a few people. Like, I can tell already there's like 1 or 2 people barely in that Final Fantasy Brave Exvius office nowadays. Because there's a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of bugs that happen that shouldn't have even close to being happened. There's maintenances that are tremendously long for stuff that shouldn't even be even close to that amount. For example, the last maintenance was extended and extended and extended again. For what? There was only a few things being put into the game. So, and then there was bugs after that. So, anyways, this whole video is kind of just a twister of everything I just have on my mind for this game right now. So, if you guys are of the same mindset, or you're not of the mindset and you just hate Final Fantasy characters and you wish they would all go away and just make global original banners only, and then someone actually mentioned that in my Discord, someone wants to delete all JP units forever and only have global original units. You know how many banners we'd be getting per month? Probably 1, and that would be it. Because they make these months, make these months in advance, but they spread them out. So you can't just say, oh, just delete all JP units forever. That's just not realistic. Anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. Very long video, but appreciate you watching. See you in the next video. Peace.